Well, hey! Today we're going to talk about something that I should have talked about when we were doing the effects series, the mini-series videos, but that was pedal order. And we've talked about what pedal the effects should go in, or what I call the optimal order the effects should go in, but we never talked about whether the effects individually should go in front of the amp, in the effects chain, or after the amp before the speaker cabinet. There's a lot of different ways to do that. Not all the effects you want straight up on a pedal board that goes directly into the amp. Sometimes you want to have certain effects, especially the time-based effects, go through an effects loop that comes in after the preamp, after your signal gets amplified by your amplifier, but before it gets to the speaker. So we'll be running through the Axe effects, and I'll put up a side-by-side screen grab of the Axe edit so you can see where I'm putting each of the effects in the signal chain. Note that I know a lot of people out there don't have amp modelers like the Kemper or the Axe effects or the Helix. So this works for your everyday tube amplifier or even solid-state amplifier as well. Let's get started. Alright, here we go, guys. So as you can see on the screen, we are in the Axe edit. This is my amp right now. This is my my signal chain. It goes into the good old American Fender Deluxe. Right now we're on the treble pickup. Nice and crunchy. What we're doing is running through a Supreme Primo Trem, which is a Supro amp model, going into the Supremo 2x12 Supro mix. I think the Supro is a great model to build effects on. It takes effects really well. Another great model would be the Mesa Lone Star 2x12. I think that's on here as well. Also the Fender Deluxe, or this Deluxe Reverb. These all take pedals really well, but I like the Supro, so that's what we're going through. So we got the treble pickup, the middle pickup, and the neck pickup, and neck and middle, middle and bridge. So there we go. So first one's distortion, or let's go with distortion. So first one's distortion. Let's go here. Let's go to drive. And when I think of distortion, I think of actual distortion, not like overdrive. So let's go with a Rat. Sure. It's your Rat distortion that you see from the 80s, the Metallica loves, that Poison and all those other bands love. So this is what it sounds like clean, and this is what it sounds like with a Rat distortion. I'm not going to do any EQing. It sounds how it sounds. I'm not going for the best sound, but just so you get an understanding of how an effect sounds like before the amp and what an effect sounds like after the amp. It sounds like how a distortion pedal should sound, right? Distortion pedals almost always go before the amp. Now I should say this before I get into anything else. These are merely suggestions or optimizations, as I like to call them. This is the optimal way to do it, but that's not necessarily the right way to do it. You might have a sound that you have in your head that the distortion pedal needs to come after the amp, and the delay pedal goes before the amp, and we'll get to that later, but just keep that in mind. So now let's move this drive. This is the great thing about the Axe effect. Let's move this drive to after the amp. Now let's hear what it sounds like. See how it almost compresses the signal, because the signal goes in the amp, it's amplified, and then it has to go into this, what's replicating a very small box. So then it gets squished down there and it's compressed drastically. So you can hear that instantly. So there's after the amp. Kind of sounds awful. So let's put it before. There you go. Now you know how distortion works. Let's move on to overdrive next. So back to the XFX. Let's change this to T808 OD, which is a Tube Screamer 808 by Ibanez, the Stevie Ray Vaughan. Everybody's used it. It sounds fantastic. Here it is, clean. Well, you know what the clean sounds like. Here it is before the amp. Sounds pretty amazing, right? Now let's see what happens when you drive that after the amp but before the speaker. See, just like the distortion before us, it gets compressed, it sounds really bad. For giggles, let's put it right after the cab. I don't know what this is going to sound like, but... sounds really bad. We're not going to do that anymore with the drives or most of the pedals. Mainly because in the XFX world you can do that. Chances are most of you guys watching this video are going to have tube amps or solid state amps, combo amps, whatever. You can't put an effect after a speaker cabinet because the speaker literally is moving air, and there's no guitar plug or XLR plug to plug into movement of sonic waves through air. So we're not going to do that anymore. Just wanted to show you what it sounds like. So we've done distortion, we've done overdrive. Let's do fuzz and face fuzz face. That's a good one. As you can imagine, you probably know what's going to happen here. Again, like the other distortions and overdrive, it sounds amazing. Let's try it in between. Like the others, thin, kind of distraught, doesn't really sound great. So those are the drive pedals. Let's move on to something else. What do we have next? We'll just go down the list. Chorus. Chorus, pretty easy, pretty self-standard. Here's your chorus sound. Sounds alright, right? Like, it sounds like what a chorus would sound like. Let's try it after the amp. So chorus sounds, in my opinion, a lot better after the amp or within the amp's effects loop. That's because it's a time-based effect. If you have the time going to like that before the amp, it's going to get distorted like but even, you know, messier distorted. But if you add the effect after the signal has been distorted by the amp and amplified by the amp, you get a nice, cleaner, crisper, classic chorus sound. The first way wasn't wrong, just a different sound. Might work better through a really clean amp, or after a distortion pedal if you're running through a clean amp. But definitely, if you're running through a distorted amp, put it in the effects loop. It will get closer to the sound you're probably looking for. Not always, but probably. So let's move on. Let's move this back to in front. Let's see what do we have next. Compressor. This is probably gonna be tricky, but here's a little compressor. A little compression beforehand. How about some compression afterwards? So notice that it's a lot softer, a lot quieter And that's essentially what compression is. It takes the highest of the highs and makes them on par with the lowest of lows, so it kind of meets them in the middle. When you compress, you have your compressor before, it takes the signal of your guitar. So like country pickers, here, let me move it back. Country pickers have this twangy, Telecaster bridge. It's not going to sound nearly as country on this, but if you do like a Brad Paisley, look like it compresses that twanginess, and the softer notes where I couldn't hit it as fast or as easily, boost those up a little bit, so it's a more even signal. Where when you do that after the amp, it's compressing the amp, kind of like the distortion, but not nearly as drastic. So that's compression. Delay. We're not going to do like some of the crazy ones like crossover and stuff. When it comes to delay, I'm not going to do analog versus digital or multi-delay. It's delay. You guys can figure that out yourself. So here's delay before the amp. Sounds relatively fine, you know. Now let's see what happens when you put it after the amp. Sounds, in my opinion, 10 times better. That's because you're not having the delay trickles get in the way of what you're playing at any given moment. That's causing the amp to amplify both what you're playing now and what you already played that's being delayed. If that makes sense. So like, you're playing this, it goes in the amp and then the delay hits, and the delay hits, delay hits while you're playing the new ones. But if you do that same lick here, see, it amplifies your guitar sound, then it amplifies the delay sound, then it amplifies the other delay sound, and the next delay sound, right? So it keeps on getting progressively lower and lower and lower. It sounds a little muddied, not as crisp as you'd like, but you do it here afterwards, the signal gets amplified and then it hits the delay effect, and then it just continues and cascades until it fades out. This is one of those effects that when I realized that you put it after the amplifier, blew my mind. Like, that sounds so much better. Why did my delay never sound as good as I thought it would? It wasn't the sound I had in my head. Usually people are looking for that delay sound. It usually goes after the amp. Hopefully this helps a little bit. Moving on, and that's the same with all time-based effects, whether it's delay, any of the modulation effects, reverb, so feedback, return, enhancer, drive we already did, format, looper, gate. We can do gate. This isn't really a hot pickup, but for gate purposes, I'm gonna grab a just so you can hear it, the difference. So my pickups aren't hot enough to make the gate make sense in the video. So here's the sound without the gate. You hear the hum, the 60 cycle hum from the pickups. Put the gate on. Voila. Now when you start playing. And it goes quiet again. If you have any kind of high gain distortion, please put a noise gate on. They'll sound so much better. Gate rate doesn't matter where in the chain it's going here. Most of the time people are using gates just to get rid of that 60 cycle hum. If you use it for other reasons, I'm sorry. That's just how I know you use it. I'm not a metal guy, so it works wherever it is in the chain, as long as it's in the chain after, I'd probably say before the amp, but after the distortion, so you don't have that 60 cycle hum. But if your amp's really cranked, maybe in between the amp and the cabinet, but make sure your gate can handle it. Some gates, like some pedals, can't. Just double check that. So moving on down the line, multi-delay, we've already done that. Multi-band compressor, we've already done compressor. EQ, I'm not going to do EQ because essentially EQ, adding EQ before your amp is changing your signal, but then when it hits your amp, it changes your signal. If you put it in after your amp, it changes the signal. So putting EQs at different spots in your chain is just going to alter what it sounds like at any given point. So no sense of testing that because there's literally an endless amount of examples I can give you. So here's phaser. Sounds pretty good to me before the amp. Let's see what it sounds like afterwards. Sounds pretty good to me there too. I noticed that after the amp, it kind of trails off a lot longer. It's kind of like the reverse. It's kind of like the reverse of the delay. When the delay was before the amp, you were kind of tripping over yourself. Here, when the phaser is after it, you kind of trip over yourself. But when it's before, like this, it all really depends on like what kind of effect you're going for. I think it sounds great both ways. So. It almost sounds more throaty when it's afterwards. I like it both ways for different purposes. All right, what's up? What's left? Pitch. You view this as an octave pedal, right? So there's the first voice. Let's make this a full octave. So let's put this down to 12. So this is what it sounds like before. There's before and after. Not nearly as prominent of an effect as it was before. With pitch, definitely do it before. Unless that's the sound you're going for with it afterwards, then by all means do that. But if you want like the stereotypical octave sound, do it before the amp. Let's see, what's next? Chorus, same thing. Resonator, I don't know what that is. Reverb. Alright, this is going to be interesting. So there's many different types of reverb that we discussed. In the incredible fractal axe effects, you can put a spring reverb after your speaker, which we all know can't possibly be done. I'll show you what it sounds like, but reverb before, they have reverb pedals. Let's see what reverb before the amp sounds like. Kind of muddled, kind of it's not. It makes things kind of mushy, not really crisp. Let's try reverb afterwards. Much better, for obvious reasons. Your amp probably has a reverb built in. If not, you know, you can get a reverb pedal. I'd put it in the effects chain, preferably the last thing in the chain before it hits the speakers. But this is what it sounds like after the speaker. I think it sounds the best there. Obviously that's a room reverb, so that makes sense. It's echoing or modeling what a room reverb bouncing off the walls would sound like. Well, let's put a spring reverb. Let's put a large spring reverb after the speaker. Physically impossible in the real world, but here in XFX land we can do it. So. Telling the difference between a spring reverb, a plate reverb, and a room reverb takes some getting used to if you don't know what you're listening to, but that sounds amazingly cool to me. I might have to try that in some of my personal music endeavors, but no, that's not possible. It's unworldly, but really cool. So let's move on. Let's see. What do we have next? A rotary. Very similar to chorus, but for your audible pleasure, here's rotary before the amplifier. And here is rotary after your amp. So for chords, it sounds the same or very close to the same before and after, but if you do sing-along notes like that, it not nearly as prominent when it's before than if it was after the amplifier. Now, in outside of XFX La La Land, the rotary speaker, like a physical Leslie speaker that actually rotates, that's the same thing as the cab, right? That is where the sound's coming out. You can't really do that before the amplifier in real life, but here it is simulated for you. Alright, let's see what else we have left. Coming to the end. Rotary synth. I'll do a synth just because it's, whatever. You might like it. Here's synth before. Here's synth afterwards. I might. That might be something I play around with later. It's actually a lot more fun than I thought. I kind of like it before that. I think it goes beforehand, at least in my mind. It sounds a lot better. Tone match, don't need to worry about that. Tremolo. Tremolo. Ooh, eerie. Oh, sounds pretty good to me. Let's try it afterwards. Yeah, I think it sounds great both ways. Personal preference, it sounds more like a tremolo effect after the amplifier. It sounds good beforehand too. We'll put that up there with phaser. I think we forgot flanger. Let's go back and do flanger. Here's flanger before. And flanger after. Definitely sounds better after the amplifier. It has more room to breathe, more room to be a flanger. I don't have my pedals plugged in. It's actually in the car, so we're gonna try the wah-wah, the final wah-wah before. I'll try to simulate it with my mouse. So. Hear it that way, right? So let's try it after the amplifier. Personally, I think it sounds like crap after the amplifier, but ooh, this is what it sounds like after an amp block. This is what it sounds like before an amp block. I apologize. Apologize, I don't have my foot pedal, and it sounds weird, not like an actual wah pedal would sound like, but hopefully you got somewhat of an understanding of what it sounds like. Different things for different places for different things. So I just got the, sorry about that, I just got the notification on my camera that says the maximum amount of time you can record is 30 minutes, so. So yeah, those are the main effects. Those are the effects that we talked about for the effects mini-series. Hope this helped. Hope now you understand not only the single chain in which you want to put your pedal order in, but also where you want to put the effects either before or after the amp. Well, there you go, guys. Hopefully now you understand better where to put your effects so you get the desired effects, in your signal chain. Hopefully this helps. Smash the like button, hit subscribe, and until next time, let the music play.